All right. Um, so to reiterate for the recording, the button to get to the final assignment is on the homepage of the course. It says final assignment and it takes you to the list of activities. I would like everything to me by like August 4th as far as the final activity goes. For discussion boards, I'd really appreciate having them done by like the 28th. The last class officially is the 27th. If you have any questions, please email me. So definitely go from there. A couple of you guys have told me that you're going to do something with the handbook, and I acknowledge that we talked about it. I didn't write it down. So if you could just shoot me an email that you're doing that and what section you're working on, that would be amazing, because I actually started writing it down on the whiteboard in my office, but I couldn't remember everything off the top of my head. So yeah, so we have two guest speakers that will be joining us. This week, we are going to have Teresa Manzano join us on Thursday. The way Thursday is going to work is we're going to have like what I would call a short mini lesson from me for about 30 minutes from 7 to 7:30. We're going to take a break, and then Teresa's going to start at 7:45 because she has about an hour-long presentation, and then she also wants to leave space at the end. And Teresa is one of our national experts in working with LGBTQ plus youth who are gifted. And she has a wealth of experience. I put her bio up on, I will have to double check where I put it. I think I put it on the page for next week. But I did put her bio up so you guys can kind of check her out and get an idea of what it is that she does. But she has a lot of experience in the field, and she is based out of Minnesota. So she is calling into us a little bit on the early side, not as much as it could be, but we're really excited to have her. And then on Thursday, the 27th, we are going to hear from Dr. Claire Hughes Lynch. And Claire is the she's the director of the new Twice Exceptional degree program at Cleveland State University. I'm really excited. There's two programs next year that are starting where you can actually get a degree in Twice Exceptional education. One of them is through Johns Hopkins, and then the other one is through Cleveland State. And so Claire, in talking to Claire and some other folks, Claire is that's not going to come out of my mouth. Claire is presenting on a new framework for how we instruct twice exceptional students, and it's one that she's starting to write a book on. And so we are going to get one of the early sneak peeks of what this framework looks like. And I'm really, really excited. I think one of her graduate students is also going to join us, who's working with her on this research. And so I'm super excited that she will be sharing that with us. And if you have nothing to do in October, I will be driving out to Cleveland for the Twice Exceptional Conference, which is in person. I'm presenting there. I've got some other folks presenting there, and I am more than happy to have someone go with me because it's just far enough that it's not worth flying. So, all right. So I want to get us started tonight. It's the second weekend in October, so I think it's the 13th, 14th, or whatever that weekend is. And I will, during the break, I'll post a link in the chat and then also up on our class page. There we go. Oh, almost forgot about attendance. Let me post that for you guys too. It might be a tad bit annoying for you guys, but oh my gosh, it makes such a difference for me. I appreciate everyone turning in their attendance and for putting in your attendance when you are doing the makeup classes. It's really, really helpful. Where do we want to start? So I think today I want to start us on hearing a little bit from our students. I've thought about having some of our actual students or graduates come talk to you guys, and they are thinking about it, but really for a lot of them, it's a little bit overwhelming, especially like a classroom full of teachers essentially. So they're in various states of working on being willing to come talk to the class. But until then, I have quotes that I've collected over the years and my predecessors have collected that we wanted to share. So we call this one hearing 2E voices, not to be confused with our 2E students who hear voices. That's a whole nother thing. So one thing that we ask our students when we are asking them to contribute to the work that we do is we ask them what it is that they wish their teachers knew. And so this is a collection that came from both pre, during, and post-pandemic. So you'll see a variety of quotes in here. I am going to read them just because we are recording, but I apologize ahead of time for reading to you guys. I know you can read on your own. So the first topic is on routines. I need clear and direct teaching, not hectic, frantic, or rushed teaching and announcements of homework. I prefer rubrics to long-winded explanations of projects. So this came to us from students who, we talked a little bit, and hopefully we'll talk a little more about the concept of like the hidden curriculum. And, when we walk in a classroom, if something's posted on the board, we expect our students are going to look at it, understand what to do with it. The problem is when we establish a routine, if we don't maintain that routine, it's really hard for our students with executive functioning issues or just any of our twice exceptional students. For them, breaking that routine is just as hectic as not having one at all. And I know a lot of times my students have said the teachers who try and get through everything and at the end go, okay, finish the rest of our homework. That's really out of sync with what makes sense to them. And so they struggle to especially remember assignments like that. So even though as teachers, sometimes we think we've established the routine of if I don't finish it in class, I can finish it at home, but not everybody does that. And so when we have unexpected changes, it's hard for our students to shift with us. The next one, it says, see my needs. I need teachers to be flexible with their teaching style when teaching someone like me. I find it problematic when discussions are one-sided or do not clarify confusing points of information. One thing that stands out to me, and I see this especially true with my high school teachers, I absolutely love you guys, but on the flexibility continuum, I find that high school teachers tend to be the least flexible and elementary tend to be the most flexible. And much like our middle school, you guys are always somewhere in between. I think a lot of times because we do have curriculum and we do have, we do group planning, there's a lot of things that are putting pressure on us as teachers to present our material. But I think that part of best practices with differentiation, best practices with twice exceptional, is really understanding that our students, especially our twice exceptional students, think very differently. And so they need the teachers sometimes to be a little more flexible with how they're teaching, how they're accepting work, how they're helping students make up work or reduce work so that they can keep up with the content of the class. I also have noted with my twice exceptional kids, when we do these discussions, we want to make sure that we are explaining very clearly if we're demonstrating multiple sides or multiple points of view, we want to be very careful to actually clarify and state that these are different points of view and help them understand what point of view you're talking about at any given time. Especially our twice exceptional children with autism. Sometimes I've gone through discussions with kids and they did not understand that there were multiple perspectives or multiple people contributing to a conversation. And so especially if we're presenting points and counterpoints, that can be very, very confusing to our students. For planning ahead, it's hard to copy notes and listen to an explanation of them at the same time. I'm a visual learner who can't learn with just slides with words. And I need to see explanations on the board, not just hear them verbally. So we know that multiple multiple modalities of instruction are good for most people, but for our twice exceptional students, it's really critical that we think of different ways to present our material and not always just lock in. So I know for me, not necessarily always for my adults, but I do really try hard to make sure that I incorporate graphics, I incorporate images, things that are going to draw the student in so that if I'm talking, they can look at the image that I'm projecting. And if we are looking at an image, I can talk. A lot of times I know with teachers, and I will say I was actually a big offender of this when I was still in the classroom. I used to tell my students, you have to try to take your notes, and then I will supply you with notes afterwards, but I need to see you trying. What I have learned since then is that for some students, copying the notes makes them not hear what you're actually saying. And so it becomes a barrier. And the last thing any of us want to do is be a barrier to our students' instruction. So, you know, when students have like notes and outlines or copy of teacher notes on their IEPs or 504 plans, really make sure you understand the purpose and when it's best for the student. Because if you have a student who wants to take notes on your notes, just kind of some of those clarifying points, or if we have a student who will get very, very distracted by having notes in front of them, or they're a doodler and they want to draw pictures of notes and then supplement them with notes from the teacher, we really want to make sure we're understanding what it is that the student is getting from having those copies of notes. And I definitely have, especially if you have a para or a co-teacher, if I do have students take notes, a lot of times I will circle my classroom and I make sure I know who has the nicest handwriting and or the best note taker. And then I would just kind of get a copy of their notes and then slide my para down, or I myself would go and make copies of that student's notes to share with some of their peers, to support that sometimes I say things in the classroom that are not on the board. And, you know, sometimes conversations happen organically and we want those notes captured as well. And so we try really hard to, we try really hard to support all of our students. So perception. Everyone tells me how smart I am, but I just can't get my grades to reflect it. I wish my teacher could understand I'm really intelligent, but a slow reader. I think this is another example that sometimes we feel like we live a little bit in like a Jeopardy world where everything is based on speed and, you know, knowing the answer most quickly, knowing the answer and being able to raise your hand first somehow connotates intelligence. But that doesn't leave always room for deep thinking, for different thinking, for and for our people, our learners who have slower processing speeds. One thing I've noticed in a lot of the reports I've been reading recently, I have a lot of students, and I would say especially the students who are coming in with anxiety diagnosis along with other things, that I'm finding that most of their cognitive scores are very high, but their processing speed is either low or relatively lower than the rest of their scores. And, you know, there's a part of me that wonders, is that part of that anxiety that they feel like they're supposed to be performing and they are unable to perform at whatever speed that is real or believed. And that's contributing to some of the anxiety and the performance struggles that our students are having. So knowledge versus production. So grading for grammar and spelling make it harder for me to be graded on what I know. I had a student I dearly loved. He was great. I had him in AP Lang. And part of his disability was that he could not tell the difference between capital letters and lowercase letters. And whether it was his name or important person, places, things, he couldn't capitalize. And you would think that something that's pretty straightforward like that to explain to somebody would be, you know, we could say, okay, we're not going to grade for that. The number of teachers that we really dealt with who were like, well, no, I mean, you have this and you have this. And I did teach him if you don't know about it, on in both Word and in Google Docs, you can actually highlight a chunk of text and put it in what's called sentence case. So from the beginning or from the end of a period to the beginning of the next period, it will automatically capitalize the first letter of every sentence, and it will automatically make everything else basically lowercase. It's helpful. It's not perfect because, of course, if you have proper nouns in the middle of a sentence, that's not going to help you. And there are tips and tricks that we can teach the students. We have spell check, we have grammar check. But at the end of the day, sometimes the question really needs to be, what is it that we are scoring our students for? And if we have a student who has their disability in written expression or written mechanics, unless we're actually grading for mechanics and spelling, if that's not a part of what we're doing, then we need to allow our students to either use the tools or just not worry about those things because they're getting the information out instead. And understand that I'm not saying that we should never teach it. And again, as the English teacher, I understand I have to balance between grading for spelling and grammar because that was part of what we were doing, but also knowing when we're going to look at that and when we're going to look at other things. Another tip that I have for teachers, especially if you are grading grammar and spelling, is to isolate a few skills at a time. So if I would expect a typical student to be able to do capitalization, punctuation, make sure everything's in current tense, that their commas and their periods are in the right place, etc. For my twice exceptional kid, I might just focus on periods and commas and not worry so much about where we're capitalizing letters. Or if I really want to focus on verb tense, I might not worry about whether the commas are in the right place because I want to focus on the verb tense. So being judicious with where I'm asking them to expend their mental energy, I think is a really important part of supporting with the just supporting our kids. I had a private message that says this should be addressed with all content teachers, 100%. I am driven insane equally by teachers who struggle, who overmark and mark students down for grammar and spelling, as much as I am by content teachers who tell me it's not English class. I don't ever worry about grammar, spelling, punctuation. Let's all find a happy medium in there. We want to teach our students and we want them to learn, but we don't want to punish them for making honest mistakes or for not taking a risk on something because they don't know how to do it properly. I think the other one, again, my high school folks, I reach out to you. At some point in high school, all of our students seem to be learning APA, MLA, and Chicago Manual or whatever other style I can't remember that the history folks tend to use. I used to teach the kids a lesson on the difference of the three. In English, we really want them to have MLA format, but frankly, I learned enough of all three of them that as long as they followed some format or another, I got over it. And again, I think it's a matter of, it's important for the students to know and to be consistent with a style, but I'm not going to mark down a kid who uses APA style when they're supposed to be using MLA style. As long as everything they're doing is actually an APA and they're not mixing them all together. And for our younger grades, that probably sounds a little bit crazy to you, but as we get into those upper level courses, we do have those expectations for students. And then especially when we're working with students who have disabilities, maybe working together with all the teachers to say, no, the student's only going to learn MLA, or no, they're only going to learn APA. And then being consistent with that so that they have a strong foundation in one instead of a partial or fractured understanding of all three. If I hear one more adult tell me that accommodations are unfair, cheating, I can't even, to me, this is where I charge you guys with being that advocate. If you hear your colleagues say it, cut that conversation right off. Cut it off. Because our kids need the accommodations that they are being given. Do they need to work with them? Do they need to learn how to use them effectively? Absolutely. But it is not cheating for a person with a disability to have accommodations. I'm not even going to belabor that one. Although I will add on the flip side, or just to piggyback on that for a hot second, 504 documents are just as legal as IEPs. You do have to give kids accommodations on 504s, even if they don't ask for them, because it is a legal document that says the student is entitled to those accommodations. Part of our teaching of students, especially students with 504s, is teaching them to request those accommodations. But again, that is a part of the self-advocacy, which is part of executive functioning, which is part of what we're trying to teach our students as they get older. They should take more and more responsibility for their accommodations, but if they're not, we still have to provide them. Yeah, that's really all I got on that as well. Yes, I do love, there's a couple of really good programs out there that you can put your link in and then click which style you want it in. If they're not 100% perfect, but they are great, especially again for our twice exceptional kids, or really any of our kids with disabilities. If you can find your link and find the way to have it auto-populate a citation, you're learning what I need you to learn, which is give credit to other people. I don't really care if you know what to capitalize or that you only capitalize the first letter after a colon, not all the letters in the sentence, depending on which style you use. I really don't care. I do care that you know how to cite other people's understanding and you give them credit for what they're doing. So again, focusing on what it is we're teaching and not being pedantic about things that they don't need to be so pedantic about in high school. So this is from partially from the online learning and from using things like Canvas. So one of the things I know I heard a lot of when we were talking about when we were doing our virtual learning, but even since then, is when teachers put, I do like a lot of the features in Canvas, but one thing that teachers sometimes will put up is you have to do this in order to do this, so like prerequisites. But the prerequisites are locked so that you really cannot progress from one to the other without doing something. And if we're doing things like reducing a workload for a student or helping them really focus, even if they're going to get poor grades on things they don't do, but we're trying to help them focus on like the bigger assignments. And again, that has to do with that prioritization and goal setting and orienting ourselves towards goals. It's really hard for me to teach a student, don't do 3 2-point assignments when you have a 20-point assignment out there that you need to get done, if they can't get to the 20-point assignment until they do every one of those 3-point assignments. And even in the classroom, I've seen this as well, where teachers won't accept a final product unless they have all the little steps leading up to it. So being cognizant of, again, what it is that we're trying to get out of our students, what we're trying to do with them. If a student, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I mean, if a student takes a test and gets 100% on the test, I probably don't need them to do all the homework that they did prior to the test to show that they were learning the knowledge. It depends on the topic, it depends on the purpose, but generally speaking, in some of the classes, we call that challenge. And I'm gonna hold off on some of that till we get to our differentiation section, but they're things to look about. Extended time versus flexible due dates. And I'm sure somebody's going to smile on here in a minute because I literally had this conversation with their child like 3 days ago. If I take a twice exceptional learner and they have a week to work on the project, and they're going to do it at the last minute. If it's assigned on Monday, it's due on Friday, they're going to start Thursday night, Friday morning. If I give them extended time and I give them 2 weeks to do their project and I assign it on Monday, and it's due not that Friday, but the Friday after, they're going to start the Thursday after. Giving them just carte blanche extended time is not really providing the extended time our students need to work around their accommodations, their processing speed, their organization, their prioritization. What works better is flexible due dates. And what a flexible due date would look like is I assign a part of, and this goes along with chunking assignments or breaking assignments into tasks. I look at, say, an opening paragraph, and I want my whole class to write the paragraph in one class period. I might go to my students and say, guys, what's realistic? Can we get through, a really good thesis statement and maybe identify our main points? That works for my students. Half of them get it done, half of them need more time. So the half that get it done, I give them their next due date. All right, guys, now you're going to flesh this out into a full introductory paragraph. And then my other friends, I'm going to say, okay, well, what is it that we need to do next? And so instead of giving them just the straight up extended time, we're giving them that extended time broken down. And as the students get older, so especially again, my secondary students, but again, this also depends on where their progress is, then we start that demystification process. All right, so this is my way of thinking. I noticed that in the beginning, you take twice as long as everybody else to get started, but once you get going, you can kind of keep pace with everybody. So let's kind of front load your extended time up here to get these things done. And then next we can move on to that next piece. And Christine, I think that's more what I'm saying right now. For something where when you do have, like I said, I understand there are certain subjects that you do build in order. So, but I'm also guessing for an art assignment, like you said, they're trying to jump to the final and they can't because they need to learn those skills in between. That is different to me than something that's like a content knowledge test where you are showing the knowledge that you have on a specific area where you could potentially challenge. For something like art, the flexible extended time is really where, again, I think it's helpful for our students. And again, even if you're doing this with the whole class, the part that our students need is that direct instruction in it and that direct demystification piece where you're saying, this is what I'm seeing with you, this is how I'm extending the time. So that way, if they learn one step quickly, they can progress through that. And if they need more time on the next step, you're kind of helping them manage that time so that when they do get to the end step, they actually have all those pieces in a row. Something else, and obviously I don't know how you teach. I do know I've seen some art teachers who will show like a snapshot of all the steps. And again, not being the art teacher, but like, showing the canvas and showing how you're mixing paints and then showing kind of all the different processes that you go through, but show them a snapshot so the students see that build out before they begin the assignment. I've seen other teachers where they only teach the skill that we're learning right now, or they say, this is what we're going to work on, and today this is the skill we are, and they're not showing all the steps in the process. And I think for some of our kids, they will go through that process more if they can see the entire process and understand the function of the process. Because if they look at something and think they can do it, breaking things down, again, executive functioning, that is where their struggle is. So giving them that kind of long-term preview and then helping them with steps along the way can often go towards helping them actually produce. So this, I'm hoping, is something that has gotten a little bit better. And I heard this a lot from students, especially during and post-pandemic. There was a lot of cool things that we had access to online, and teachers are always finding cool things. But sometimes we get this idea that the students have to do the most basic part before they can get to the fun stuff or use some of the fun tools. Again, not talking about things that require safety, but when we have things that, when we do have things that are interesting for our kids, if we don't give them access to the interesting part, we're going to lose them very quickly. One way that I read something recently, and to me it makes a lot of sense, where people with not even gifted, but people with ADHD tend to see a very, very big, broad worldview picture, and they have trouble narrowing it down to the individual points. So when it comes to instruction, if you're teaching a whole bunch of little skills and the kids never see what that big picture is going to be, they don't value the skills you're teaching them. Whereas if you show them the big picture, And then as you go, you talk about how those individual skills either link together or build on each other and how they connect up to that big picture. It is easier for students with ADHD especially to understand what you're talking about. And this was eye-opening to me because I realized that that's actually how I teach. And I wish I realized that that's how I taught many, many years ago. And I think it's one of the reasons that I do well with twice exceptional kids and other kids with disabilities, much more than I do with students without disabilities, because I always started teaching from that big perspective. And then as we go along, I'm like, oh, you need that skill. I should probably teach you that skill. And I would teach that skill, and then we would move forward with what we were working on, which, as I now understand, drives other people nuts because they feel like they can't move forward unless they have all their tools or all their pieces in front of them. And I think that awareness, not of your own teaching style, but of how your students are thinking, um, I think is also just a really important thing. And I think that's also another reason why being lifelong learners is such an important piece for being a teacher, because you do learn things along the way, and things that, again, you wish you had known 20 years ago, that you can make that change moving forward. So this isn't the I'm scared to go back. It's not that I don't want to learn. I just did much better at home. This was a real mixed bag for our twice exceptional kids. Some of them did phenomenally at home and others did not. Um, I heard a lot actually from kids who are in some of the social emotional or like bridge programs. When they were away from all their friends and peers who could be distracting or annoying or whatever to them, it was a lot easier for them to focus on what they were doing. And so, yes, there was a huge loss of social development, but for some kids, it just worked a lot better. I feel this all the time. Like, if you ever have meetings with me, like, I prefer air conditioning, but when I have my air conditioning, I prefer to be here at home. I get phenomenal work done when I'm at home. Sometimes I need to go to the office and talk to people, but I'd much rather get on Zoom, get on Google, and talk to them. And I also don't like telephones. I much prefer a video chat to a telephone call because I want to be able to see you. I just don't necessarily want to be near you. Um, and I can control my environment so much better when I'm in my space here. But I've been told to go back to the office, and it really is, I don't control the light, I don't control the sunlight, I don't control the temperature, I don't control the noise volume. And so it's like all these external factors that are outside of my control that I have to learn to live with again. It's not that I don't want to be back with my coworkers or colleagues or back in the schools with everybody, but when I have work to do, I like to be able to hold on to my environment. And I also can articulate that because I'm older. Some of our students are not able to. And so every time, it's the same. No, it's not much different than when we go for a summer break and then it's a huge transition to get back to school. When they were gone home for so long and they had the chance to experience learning at home, it was a lot harder. It was a lot harder for that transition to come back. The next piece, even when the directions are clear, most of the time I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing on my own. And yes, I was paying attention. And I remember hearing that. Just pay attention. What are you, just pay? Did you not pay attention to what I said? I literally just said that. No, I also have been the one to say, oh my God, I've said this 16 times already. Let me repeat myself again. That goes again with that executive functioning piece and that breaking it down. We go over an assignment, we talk about this, you have some really great ideas, your head's probably spinning with ideas. What do I put on paper first? One of my favorite strategies with this goes back to kind of that talk it out. And in my classroom, I frequently would have the students, when it was time to start, I'd give them options. If you want quiet workspace, you're ready to go to this side of the room. If you need to talk it out with your friends because you're going to talk to them anyway, so I might as well let you talk in a purposeful manner, head to like that part of the room. And if you just have questions and you want to work with an adult, stay up here and we'll go through some of those additional questions or we'll repeat. And my students know to stay back with me because they were likely going to need that one-on-one time with me to kind of figure out where we were going to get started. And my students who went off in the chat group, what I would hear, because and what I taught them and what I would hear was, okay, did she say this? What is this? How are we starting this? What is this all about? And they would talk amongst themselves and figure out what it was that they were supposed to be doing. They just needed to verbally process what we had just talked about. If I sent everybody out and told them to work in silence from the get-go, I'd have a lot of faces staring at me. And so again, being flexible with how students consume information, how they comprehend information, and giving them different opportunities. And the chat group was not always the same, and the quiet group was not always the same. I feel like there are times where I would give the students, and I planned the project, I planned the lesson, I taught the lesson, I gave directions. I would send them out to do what they needed to do. And a kid would say to me, where am I supposed to start? And I would be like, I have no idea. Like, I would have that moment of like, it was all so clear until I asked you to do it. And now, like, I don't always know what I'm supposed to tell you as the next step. So we would talk it out. Well, what do you think is the best way to start? And I realized sometimes that freeze for me was just a freeze. Like, you get asked, what am I supposed to do when you freeze? And sometimes it was, I think differently than my student does. So how are they thinking about this project? And how do I help them start based on their thinking and not necessarily my thinking? So I am going to stop sharing for just a minute. And one thing I kind of like to do is, for those of you guys who have twice exceptional students or kids, or just anything that kids have said to you that really have struck you, that kind of come along with this working with a twice exceptional, and you're welcome to come off mute or put in the chat things that you've noticed, or things that students have said to you that really kind of hit you. All right, well, that is okay. So I am going to start us then on our next, so I'm going to read out loud. I teach in Bridge. I have a 2E girl that graduated from Watkins Mill in 21. She was here for some of the quotes. They resonated with both of us, and she'd be willing to talk to the rest of the class if interested. I am always happy to have kids talk, not have to hear my own voice. Chris, are you saying your 2E kid is like actually your child and is there with you?
Yeah, she just went back in her room, but she would come out in a heartbeat if you want to talk to her. She's wonderful.
I would be more than happy to have her come out and chat with us.
All right, let me just see if she's.
I do have quite a lot of theater kids, not so much in the recent time, but overall.
Yeah, so they're fearless, right? Like, they're quirky and they'll do anything. It's magnificent.
And they're verbal and they like to perform. And
all right, I'm gonna go talk to her for a minute.
well, Marielle, I like that. I know how to do it, the factor equations. I just don't remember how to do it. My God, the number of times I can still probably quote the quadratic formula. Can't calculate with it. Don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, but I have it memorized up here, except if it's on a test, and then I have no idea. Sorry, someone started to speak.
I was going to say, I have Nina's question too. I had a student with an IEP who always worked really hard, did really well. And at the end, when I asked for feedback, he said more breaks. And I didn't know exactly what that means for him and for all students.
So I would say, for an individual student, talk to them and say that, like, what do you mean by more breaks? Like, for some of my students, more breaks would mean a brain break. Like they are just 100% done with whatever we're talking about, and they wanted to go color, or they wanted to watch something on YouTube, or they wanted to listen to music, or go take a walk in the hallway. So those were all like very specific things. And then on another side of it, for some of the students, I specifically have several TUI students right now who don't like to take a break if nobody else is taking a break. And especially if you're in like elementary or in a block setting and you're having those kids sit for 90+ minutes, building chunks of time in where everybody's going to take a break, change their seats, wiggle around a little bit is really, really helpful for our kids. And then sometimes when they say take a break, I think they actually mean that they want the assignment itself broken up, and they want to have more distinct starting and stopping times so that they don't feel like they're just constantly spinning on one thing when they should have moved forward, or they feel like they have a ton of work to do in a short period of time and we want to give them smaller chunks to go. So I see Kristen is back with her. Hello. Coley, are you okay going on the spot? Do you mind if I record you?
I'm totally good. You're totally welcome to record me. We're talking about, as far as I'm aware, from what I've been told, we're talking about what GTLD kids need, like, and would prefer their teachers to know in the classroom, right?
Right, just a little bit about your experience and anything you want to share with us. We have teachers here pre-K through 12 and all sorts of other roles. So anything you'd like to share.
That's fantastic. Hi, my name's Coley. I graduated in 2021. I'm currently going to college for art, but I was mostly a theater kid in high school. That's why I'm comfortable talking now. A little oversharing, my bad. But very much something that I experienced all throughout my academic life. And this might be very much a me thing, but I think this could be said for a lot of GTLD kids. It's a lot of the basic stuff that is hard, like basic multiplication, division, memorization was difficult for me. Any higher level thinking stuff I was great at. I have amazing vocabulary, like can shoot out fun words and definitions all day, but I can't spell to save my life. I'm very dyslexic, so people just assume like my actual ability to communicate in essays have been very dampened because I can't spell big words easily. It takes a lot of Google searches to be able for Google to even process what I'm trying to say to get the correct spelling. I've noticed that I heard you talking about making more easier to digest tasks in smaller chunks. Chunking is incredibly helpful. It's one of the ways I get through everyday life. The only way that I can get through some tasks like basic cleaning is if I make things so incredibly small and so incredibly chunked. Like steps, this might seem like demeaning or talking down to a student. So like it's important to like measure how much that kid would appreciate it, I think. But for myself, I write down things like pick up clothes, pick up the clothes on your bed, pick up the clothes on your floor, make sure to put them in the laundry, grab the laundry key, grab the detergent, like every possible step, what rooms I have to enter. And that way I'm not like going halfway through and being like, oh, I don't know, squirrel, and completely gone. Goodbye. Whatever I was doing doesn't matter. New objective. I am dyslexic, dysgraphic. I think I have dyscalculia, and I am ADHD. I don't know if that was apparent. I am currently not medicated for my ADHD due to the what's it called? There's a shortage of ADHD meds in America right now. So I'm not medicated for it. I am going it as best as I can with whatever coping mechanisms I can come up with. I think a big thing is if the kids don't find it interesting, they're not gonna like really attach themselves to it. And I understand it's hard to make subjects interesting, like math and science. I like science. I like science a lot, but there's some subjects that are just harder to grasp for people who it's not their special interest or not their personal like joy. So I think a big part of it is to try to figure out what that kid likes and then trying to match it up with the subject. Like, oh, you really like, I don't know, dragons? You really like dragons? So if a dragon lays this many eggs and then you take away this many eggs, it helps. It doesn't really matter the age. Yeah. Like, I know it might sound really like rude to like do that to like an older kid, and I could see where it could come off as demeaning, but I would have been more interested in math if they put it in that terms in like high school. Like I wouldn't have minded. And like generally just being really open to hearing what they're saying. I think there's a lot of quiet ableism in every part of society, every single part of society. And I think it's hardest when you're in an education system that says they understand and is trying to be like listening to you and really trying to like be there for you and with you, but you can tell they don't really get it or care. Like if I'm like, hey, I know what I need to do, I'm really struggling because of X, Y, and Z. You're not seen as a kid who is having a learning difficulty or someone who is struggling to completely understand the material for whatever reason. You're seen as someone who's lazy. You're seen as someone who just won't get it, even from teachers who are supposed to understand.
Yeah.
And I think if you explain to the teacher personally, well, I think if the kid would explain to the teacher personally what they're experiencing, I think it's that teacher's responsibility to try their best to believe them. Because I cannot tell you how many times I've been with teachers and been like, hey, I'm struggling. And I couldn't fully vocalize it because I was young, but I was trying, but they thought I was making excuses or I wasn't trying. And like, I feel like a lot of accommodations are very helpful, like separate testing and stuff. But I found that a lot of the time it would make it worse for me because it would be like pointing me out in a crowd and saying, this one's different, this one's weird. And it was really obvious. Like I tried my best to look neurotypical and look normal and act like everyone else, but people can just sniff it out. You can't fake it. So when it comes to things like that, I think even when the kid has the accommodation to leave the room, I think it's worth the conversation one-on-one every time, not just like once, but like some days maybe it's more beneficial. Maybe there's some kids that also go one-on-one that are a little bit noisier, or maybe it's just too quiet. Like there's a lot of reasons. I've noticed when I was separated, a lot of the time I had a harder time concentrating when I was separated from my classmates than when I was with them. Let me know if I should shut up because I feel like I keep going and going, but like that's the biggest thing, just listening to the individual. Because like I'm talking from someone who had ADHD, dyslexia, I went down the list already. I'm talking from my own very unique, very personal experience. And the GTLD program is meant for anyone who struggles on anything, but you know, can usually have higher level thinking and can usually like gauge bigger concepts. And I think as someone who went through the program, I went through the program starting at elementary school at 3rd grade. I left for high school. I left the program in middle school to go to a performance art magnet. And then I went back for high school because I was struggling again. And despite me not always being in the program, it was definitely like better than what I was getting at my high school or my other elementary school. Loiterman, the middle school I went to, was fantastic despite not having as many accommodations. But I think the GTLD program, like having like a case manager and having someone to check in with consistently and someone to like bat things back and forth was very helpful, especially as someone who's just, this isn't even really an ADHD thing. I think it might be, but I really struggle sending emails. So having someone that could have done that for me really made a difference, because I wouldn't send the email. I couldn't. I still struggle to send emails, but I'm getting better about it.
I always offer, but she's determined to be independent.
Like I gotta learn eventually, or like, what am I gonna do? Not pay my taxes or something? I don't know. Like I gotta figure it out. So not much of a choice there. But yeah, I mean, really just listen to the kids. Everyone's individualistic. Whether or not it's ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dysgraphia, whatever. It's very important because like every diagnosis is different. Like as someone with ADHD, I need more sound, I need more stimulus, I need a lot, but someone with autism might get overstimulated and that might be really hard for them. So maybe me blasting music in the classroom would hurt them, but the classroom being too quiet would hurt me. So like headphones, you know, like there's just a lot of levels to it to think about. And I can understand why that would be difficult for a teacher with a big class. But over time, I think it's just important to get to know kids on an individualistic basis.
This has been so amazing. And honestly, like I'm listening to this and I'm also like I shared with the group earlier, I've had trouble getting some of my kids, because I did not have a lot of theater kids, or some of them are in grad school or whatever, getting them to come back and talk to everybody. But what you're sharing is very, very similar to what they shared. I taught at Northwood, so that's where the majority of my kids were at. And I picked up some of your friends from Loiterman, and they were with us at Northwood. But you know, that the thing you even started with, where you say easy is hard and hard is easy, is just like one of the mantras that we have for our Twice Exceptional kids. I don't know if you can see the chat. There's a lot of praise for you. There is a good question. I think it's an amazing question, actually. In terms of peers, how did you find making friends? Easy or hard? What helped?
Friends have always been difficult for me. I think the biggest thing is what I sort of say when I talk about making friends is all my friends were neurodivergent, queer, and or traumatized, or all of the above. That was the friend groups I fell into, and that was kind of what was like, wow, same mood, absolute mood. Same. And that was like it for me. Making friends have been so much harder since COVID and getting out of school, but generally, for me, the experience was always, I would have one good conversation with them and that was it. I can't do the talking phase. I can't do the, how was the weather? How was your day? Like, it's like we walk up to each other and I'm like, this person died in my life and this thing happened, but I'm gonna make a joke out of it. And they're like, dude, that's so funny. My family member died. I'm like, great, high five. And then friendship, it blossoms. And that's, I think it's a hit or miss for me when making friends that way. And it's definitely not how old kids make friends, but it's definitely different than how neurotypical kids would make friends. It's very much like, I lay it on thick right off the bat. I don't do the small talk. It's all or nothing. I have a lot of friends right now where we're talking and we're in that talking stage, but I have no idea how to break through without like genuinely trauma dumping, but I don't think they would appreciate, you know, like without getting that honest with them and then just having that open line communication. It's very much all or nothing for me. It's like I don't know you acquaintances and genuinely friends, and I just have a lot of acquaintances right now, but I'm hoping that I can start making stronger connections.
You're like my whole course in the box. I absolutely love this. And I will tell you, I did not have like normie friends until like the last like 3 years, or like after I turned 40 and everybody stopped caring so much about whatever. Suddenly, like, they don't mind my trauma dumping and they don't mind my weirdness. And I have a very small group of neurotypical normal friends, and I tell them all the time, like, you guys are my first normies, and you guys are my first. I don't know if normies like being called normies, but I call them that anyway.
It's not their problem.
And it's just like, I'm like, you guys are the first people who don't have issues like I do, who don't make me feel weird or out of place. But I agree, like we talk about all the time, like our kids thrive when they come to us because they find their people, because there are some times where you have a very large group of people just naturally who are twice exceptional, and then we have our outlier kids who maybe just don't happen to have any other 2E kids with them, and they're the ones who tend to come to us and really like kind of thrive when they come to us and meet others who are like them. And you definitely should listen, if you can, on Thursday to our guest speaker, because she's coming in to speak about LGBTQ plus and gifted and twice exceptional. So
it's funny that you say like being in a group with like other GTLD kids generally helps make bonds. Like, I met my boyfriend through the GTLD program. We've been dating for 4 years. We're planning on moving in together relatively soon. But that being the exception, I didn't really click with many of the GTLD kids. I came in halfway through the first year of high school because of difficulties socially and academically at my first school. And I showed up, and the first semester I was very, like, the second half of that year I was very alone. I regretted moving schools. I was incredibly isolated. And it wasn't until I joined theater until I actually started talking to people and coming out of the box a little bit. I definitely was never to the point where I was open, where I, like, the previous school did a huge damper on my self-esteem and the way I commune with people. So I never fully got back to that, but it was working back towards it. Like I could finally be somewhat of myself in some situations. And I think another part about just making friends in general when you're twice exceptional is you're going to find places you don't expect. Like even if you do everything amazingly and try to be so nice to people, I have like a lot of experiences where I've been replaced by friends. Like I'll have a friend, but they'll find someone better. And it's like, they don't need me anymore. Friends feel a purpose. I don't feel their purpose anymore. They're gone. That's a me issue. I don't know if that's a whole GTLD thing, but it's something that I'm very aware of. So it's like when I'm making friends, it's very hard because I feel like I have to make that connection and be better to the extent where like, they're not going to replace me. But the fact that I have to keep that mentality, I think would be a shock if it wasn't connected to my ADHD and neurodivergence. I think it's hard to be friends with me if they're neurotypical. And I think it's, I can see where it might be difficult when I struggle to reach out consistently and struggle to consistently be able to make plans, especially when I'm an extremely people-pleasing person. And I think that can also come off as very strong. I saw someone ask in the comments, is college easier than high school? 100%. 100%. It's easier in so many ways. Like not only is it like academic, like I understand that the papers are technically harder, but I got all A's like the majority of my time at community college. Like it's so much easier. You get to make your schedule. You get to fit it to your sleep schedule. You get to choose what classes and when you want to take them. You get to like pick your major instead of learning about a bunch of stuff you don't care about. You get to like, how do I put this into words? And like, if you do choose to like move out, then you get like more options for like, I love you. You get more options for like how you spend your time and how you want to get to class and all that stuff. And it's like, you really learn to be an adult, which is the experience for everyone. And I think it's more that way when you're neurodivergent, because you have to learn, like no one else is going to do your dishes or laundry. No one else is going to help you with that. And you have to learn how to do the basic parts of being an adult. And you can sometimes finally be able to do them in the way that you can finally do it in a way that helps you. Like I hate dressers. Dressers are the worst thing in the world. I will never use them. I will never use them. I will leave my clothes on the floor in piles and it's horrendous, but I was able to find a way to organize it in my college dorm in a way where it was easier. Yes, I still majoritively use the dressers because they gave me dressers and I didn't want to annoy my roommate with clothes on the floor, but I was able to use the shelves above my desk to just throw clothes into certain piles, which was really convenient.
I will show you our organization system sometime in my house. We don't really do dressers either.
Oh,
We have a
great.
lot of baskets, a lot of labels.
Baskets labels the best.
I can dump them in the right place and then I push them and you can't see, so nobody knows how messy it is on the inside. But
Yes.
yeah, no, everything like you said, I don't know if it, when you said I don't know if it's just my experience, what you're describing is something that is frequently typical. We hear it a lot, especially like you said, from ADHD or our neurodivergent crew. Pardon me, my cat is very rude and has no manners. Something you said earlier when you started answering the question about college, I was listening to the neurodiversity podcast the other day, and they were specifically talking about how not only is a liberal arts education better designed for twice exceptional people, but also just neurodivergent people in general, because you do get to focus on what you care about, but you also get the opportunity to experiment with a whole lot of different things. And one of the things that is a struggle in modern education is we keep trying to like narrow things down to be quantified and not necessarily, qualified. And we keep having more and more like very strict expectations. And for people with our brains who work differently, it's so much harder. And yet undergrad remains one of those places where you do it better because you're interested. And I mean, I just, my experience even after undergrad was like, I did okay with my first master's. My second master's, I did amazingly because it was about gifted and twice exceptional. It was exactly what I wanted to learn. I just finished my third one, which was the admin one, and it was like pulling teeth. Like I sat at my mother's dining room table for 4 months trying to write the final project because I needed my mom to yell at me to do it. But I'm getting ready to start an EDD program, PhD program, which I'm super excited about, and I can't stop writing about because I actually care. And so, you're right. It's just when you get excited, I can feel it. I light up. When you get excited about something, you hyper focus, and I don't think we talk about the hyper focus enough, and sometimes it gets misinterpreted as rigidity or disinterest, but it's like you're just so excited you don't want to stop.
I think,
So
sorry, continue.
no, go.
I think hyperfocus is something that people need to know more about. Like, it doesn't feel like it's important in the classroom, but I think just generally in understanding the kids, it's important. Like, I don't feel particularly fulfilled if I don't have a special interest. Everything feels dull and colorless and like not really any purpose. But when I got that hyperfixation, things are good, things are great. But that sucks because my hyperfixation isn't on things that I would deem productive some of the time. But I have been falling into some like hyperfixations that have actually really helped me. I fell into this is going to be like a little bit of a micro tangent on my own hyperfixation. I'll keep it brief and then get back on track. But I fell into VR recently in the interest of fantasy worlds to get away from real life. And in that, there is 3D modeling, which people will pay hundreds of dollars for a 3D model. And it looks like it could be a good career for me. Like, I just stumbled into 2 hyperfixations. I'm learning Blender to make rigs and bones and like full models that can have facial expressions for VTubing, if you know what that is, and other like really high-end things. And I could go into like helping make games with that. It opens the door for so many possibilities. And I think a lot of people, when following the dopamine, is the way that I hear it described. When people follow the dopamine, they just end up in happier situations instead of like trying to box themselves in. Even if the hyperfixation seems pointless, I think usually the hyperfixations are for a reason.
Absolutely. And yes, follow the dopamine. Is it Connor DeWolf on Twitter or Insta, or one of the twits out there, has a huge following about ADHD, and follow the dopamine is actually what he has on a t-shirt. But I clearly follow him. He's one of my hyperfixations. But and actually when you mentioned it before, the dragons and the fantasy, the world of D&D and Pokemon and Warhammer, most of the folks there are neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of good research right now about how people are using D&D almost as like social therapy for twice exceptional people, or any neurodivergent people, because you get to leave your world, but you also learn how to talk to people, and there's a script, but there's not a script. And I don't personally care for a lot of it, but I do all the painting for my husband because he's super into it. So like that's my hyperfixation, is painting all of his armies and all of his little whatever, and his hyperfixation is actually playing it. And I don't know what, my daughter's painting a pink orc army right now. So that was a real down the rabbit hole there.
My colleges actually have a therapy group with D&D. Like, it's a D&D therapy group, and they're running it next semester. And
What college are you at?
Towson.
That makes sense. They have a whole neurodivergent
So nice
support program there.
It's so nice. I've been part of the executive function support group, and they give so many good tips. My favorite tip for executive function that I really, really liked was associating flavors of gum or certain hard candy, like a flavor or a scent, with tasks. So like if I'm chewing bubble gum, I know I should be doing an art study. If I'm chewing mint gum, I need to be working on 3D modeling. If I'm chewing like blueberry or something, I should be writing my essay. And if I'm consistent enough about doing what I'm supposed to be doing when chewing that gum, it's so much easier to do the task. By a lot.
That is the weirdest thing in the world. I eat popcorn when I write IEPs.
I think that's good smart.
It never occurred to me. I just wrote that down on my notes.
I have so many flavors of gum and mints specifically for that. I am very aware of the amount of sugar that I'm putting on my teeth though, so I'm trying to brush more frequently. I'm assuming that some of you guys are also twice exceptional. There's the word, exceptional, and have other neurodivergence. There's an app that I really love that you can suggest to your kids or for yourself. It's called Habitica. It has a purple griffin image and it essentially gamifies life. So you have daily tasks that you do every day that will give a little bit of coin and mana and stuff to upgrade your character. And you have, if you don't do your tasks, you take damage in game. You have habits, which are tasks that are optional, but you get a lot of gold for doing them. And Habitica, I don't know how to spell it, like habit, T-I-C-A.
I'll find it.
Bet. And then you have tasks or just, I don't know what it's called, but it's like one time do things that give you a good boost and you just click it once and you're done. And that's what I use for everything. That's how I brush my teeth every day. That's how I get my hair washed. I check it off Habitica and it gives me that little dopamine boost. It works on mobile and on desktop. So I personally mostly use the mobile version, but it's nice to log into the desktop because it just looks cleaner. And also there's rewards built into the game. So you earn money by doing tasks like in-game currency. But with those tasks, you can also with that money, you can make your own habits. Like you can, make your own rewards. Like you type out something like, get to eat a cookie for 5 coins. And then every so often when you earn 5 coins, you get to choose if you whether want to cash out your in-game currency or not. Like I have stuff like play a video game for 30 minutes or watch an episode of a show. But I have to do enough to earn that cash out. So Habitica has been very useful to me. You can customize your character and there's you can do it in groups. So if you have friends that you want to keep accountable, you guys can do battles together. And if anyone doesn't do their task, everyone takes damage. So that they have to be held accountable. Obviously, it was a hyperfixation of mine. I still use it. It's cool. This is just my suggestion if it would be helpful for you guys. And you
I'm
definitely
100% going to set this up on my husband's phone after class is over. So
yeah, it's great. It has a purple griffin icon. So
I got it.
Perfect. It's fantastic. I love it so much.
And also to your point, I had something similar before that was an SEL app that was supposed to help with mindfulness. Yeah, the bird died. It wasn't for me. It's funny, it's called Finch, which is my maiden name. So I was like, oh, I will so buy. Nah. Bird
No,
dead. I deleted it off my phone because
literally.
you have to hit the right thing.
I tried to use a plant watering app to remind myself to drink water, and I also killed the plant. I really killed the plant. Habitica is like habit. Oh, it's sent the link. But with Habitica, you can log into the tavern, which is something that I think is important to know if you guys decide to do it, and then I'll shut up about it. But you can sign into a tavern at any time so you stop taking damage. So if you're having a really bad week or you're not available to do things, you can turn on log into the tavern and you can continue doing your tasks without taking any damage. So you won't die. You'll only get the benefits from it when you do your tasks. So that I like the app. But yeah, in general, it's just finding out what makes your brain happy and how to associate tasks with certain sensations. It didn't have to be gum. I had a plushie and a blanket that I'd always sit in when I worked on certain assignments, for a certain class. I'm like, this is hard. I need something extra comfortable. I'm getting my plushie and my blanket. And that was the association I needed.
That is amazing. I'm going to work that into instruction somehow, because we teach executive functioning, and we are trying to be more purposeful. And I absolutely love that. And I think back again, sometimes we have chew gumma and IEP as a nervous habit kind of thing. But I think what you're saying also about how you're associating different things, or my favorite flavor of gum with my most hated class, because at least I get something good out of it. I think that those are some really amazing points, and they're things that will work for some of the older kids too, because I think, there's a ton of whoever recommended the Work Smart book the other day, for the 40 activities for kids. I bought it. It's on my desk at work. I sent it to work so my husband doesn't know I bought it. But all the activities are for kids. It's ages 6 through 9. I have another one where they create their own superheroes to overcome their difficulties. But when we get to our high schoolers and older, it's getting much harder to find things that are cool enough to interest them that also make a difference. So your tips are amazing. I could absolutely talk to, I feel like I need to hook up some time with you to get some like a formal interview, or have you come on the road with me for some of our conferences, because girls with ADHD are very underrepresented out there.
Really are. It's such a thing. I'm shocked I got diagnosed, honestly. I got so lucky. Sorry, continue.
No. I've said to the group before, I got diagnosed because I present more like a boy with ADHD than a girl with ADHD. But one of my friends is actually one of the premier researchers in girls with ADHD, or gifted girls with ADHD. So I feel like I should hook y'all up. Absolutely amazing. Please, if you guys have any other questions, I don't want to take your whole evening. I do have one more short presentation I want to get to with everybody, but I cannot thank you enough. I'm so glad we're recording this, and hopefully we can chat at some point, because you are amazing at this, and we should capture as much as we can out of your brain so that I can really roll it into my class and help support others, because that's what I do. That's what makes me happy. So thank you again. And yeah, if we have any other questions, we'll definitely let you know. Yeah, TED Talk.
TED Talk, yeah. I don't know about that.
Figure out how to work it into a class so you get a grade for it. And, you know, we'll do an MCPS TED Talk. How's that sound? I floated that idea before. But yeah, thank you so much for just coming to speak to us tonight. I cannot thank you enough. And I remember you, because you were in 8th grade in like 2017, 18.
Yes.
Yeah, so I started in 18. So I was like on the periphery, and I didn't get too involved because I was learning my job. But I do remember that whole.
Yeah, weren't you in one of my AP meetings?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like one of the first ones I went to at Watkins Mill.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to see just how much you've blossomed in the last 17 years. So thank you so much. I'm going to give everybody a break because I need to refill my water. And if you don't know my tragic story, the air conditioning does not work in my office. So I'm going to go downstairs and get some air conditioning and some water, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. And our next part we're going to talk about is, I don't know, I have 3 presentations up, and I'll pick which one we're going to do when we come back. Thank you again.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you. Flag towards them. Parents. Like no flag towards them. They're phenomenal. But I think my experience with it is they would know that they were there for me. And then they would sit right next to me, and they would look over my shoulder, and gave me the most trouble. I think if you could do anything to help your kids not stand out and feel socially isolated, is make it like, I don't want to like really make the parents' job harder, but make the parents be there for all the students. And if they are just there for you, for a particular student, don't make it so that they're sitting next to them, staring, specifically nitpicking their work. Because like those are the classes I did the worst in. I would rebel. I didn't want to try when someone was standing over my shoulder and like making me feel pretty dumb, in all honesty. So
Stop the hovering.
Stop the hovering. Like, I understand that we struggle, and I think I'm not saying we're dumb, but I could see where someone would make that assumption when it's about math or English or reading. But we are trying, and maybe we're not. Maybe there's some people who just don't have any interest in the subject, but I feel like you hovering there isn't gonna help. I feel like at that point, you just gotta spin it in a way that they'll find it interesting, which I understand. Having a class of 30 kids, there's no way you can talk to each and every one of them. Like, I think passive watching, even that's hard with such a big class, but like seeing what they do, like if they're on their phone, like I'm not saying look at their phone, but I'm saying like if they're drawing on their papers, they probably like to doodle. If they're like, if you know what extracurriculars they're in, maybe they're just in it because it's some way to take up time, but maybe it's something they're genuinely passionate about, and you could try to incorporate that. Sorry,
I,
for taking too much
one of
time.
the
I know you
one
have
of the-
stuff to do.
I say one of the trainings I'm working on, and I kind of I always like the word pilot because it means I can try things and get away with them, I feel like, but has been on how to teaching parents how to work with twice exceptional kids, because it is very different. And having taught special education and taught in our bridge program, and then, you know, the difference between students with emotional disabilities and gifted students who have all sorts of disabilities, and students who are in our more traditional special ed programs, the way you teach and the way you para is so different. And I had a semester where I had students who were not gifted who were in my honors class, and they were appropriate for honors, but they weren't appropriate for my honors section because their needs were so divergent from my twice exceptional kids. And I said, like, I'm happy if I have to teach a second section, I will, but I can't have them in the same classroom because their needs are so different. And the way you work with those students is so different. But I think that also is actually what would be the best thing to talk about next is UDL, but I don't have any of those presentations pulled up right now. So, but you know, the mantra from UDL is just that universal design for learning. What is required for some is good for many and should be available to all, so that you don't make students feel like they don't so that students don't feel like they're standing out when they're accessing their accommodations. If I haven't, sometimes I repeat myself, but one of my examples was I taught, when I was teaching about using headphones and speech to text, I did a lesson in editing where I taught all of the students to download Google Read and Write on their computers. And I taught them all how to go through and then actually listen to what they were doing, because what you think you wrote and what you actually wrote are two different things. And so it became a requirement in my gen ed English class that everyone had to listen to their paper before they could turn it in. And what it really did was it normalized people wearing their headphones while they were working. And when everyone has their headphones on, nobody knows who's talking or not talking. And sometimes sometimes the gen ed kids were not using speech to text, but they were yelling at their paper, so it looked like they were talking. And then my kids who were using speech to text didn't stand out quite so much. So, you know, bringing that, and there are some kids who probably had their headphones on, were listening to music, whether or not they should have, but ultimately everybody was able to access what they needed without making anyone particularly stand out. And then that's also breaking things down into smaller groups, you know, like group lessons are important, but I think large group mini lessons and then breaking it down. And like you said, it might be hard to get to all 30 kids, but if I can cohort you guys into 3 and 4 kid pods, I can go over to a pod of kids and I can spend time with a group of 4 and get to everybody more than I can spend time with a group of 30 and get to everybody. So those are things I also feel like I pulled from elementary classrooms. Like elementary classrooms do a really good job with small groups and regrouping that we don't do as much in secondary. And I think there's a lot of positive things we can pull from our elementary friends in how we set up and how we teach our classes in secondary.
Oh, definitely. Two more things I want to say. A little off topic, but I'm still with you guys. Someone asked a question in the chat, what would I do if I could go back into middle school and like have a piece of advice? Math teachers have always honestly kind of scared me because it's a thing that I've always struggled at. Like I was amazing with it until middle school. Like I would be one of the best kids in my class. I found different ways around the math problems. I was really good about it until we got to division and multiplication. I loved fractions. I loved so many small things, but once we got to division and multiplication, I was done. I think this is going to sound like really weird advice, but don't make it all about math. I think a big part of it is showing the kids that you care about them. It might be enough, because all my math teachers felt very like this, like even if they were super nice and all the kids loved them, I felt like I never really got to know them, and I felt very uncomfortable with the whole topic, and I felt very alienated in any math classroom, even if the teacher was really nice to me, especially if they weren't. And I feel like making it more personal, like don't walk in and be like, hey, trauma dump, but like walk in and be like, hey, I'm a person too, you're a person, I hope everyone's doing well. Like make them look forward to coming to the class, just to like feel like they're safe and included, because I feel like math classes were so over structured. And I understand I'm not a teacher. I don't know what you guys have to put up with. I don't know what kind of things the like district wants you to do. Yeah. But I think the point is just making sure that your kids know that you care about them is first and foremost.
I was just going to ask, like, what do you do with, this is very typical. This is what classroom should look like. I've just been staring at you the whole time and I'm nodding my head. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, what do we do with numbers? What are we going to present, with numbers, with assessments, with data? What do we do? If we're going to, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You can keep going if you had more to say.
No. That's basically, so I'm like, oh my God, how do we balance giving the kids what they need? Because really, and then giving the county, the state, the world, those numbers.
I
that
want to
they
say
so
5
need.
minutes. Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to cut you off again. I'm sorry.
I'm done.
5 minutes. 5 minutes at the beginning or at the middle or at the end of your class. Talk to your kids like people. Doesn't even have to be 5, maybe even 3. Like, don't make it about the subject for 5 minutes. I think that's enough. I would say 10, but I understand you don't have that much time. But the more the merrier, like while they're doing classwork on their own and just doing manual, like brain thinking, like take a chunk out of that to be like, did you see that crazy thing on the news? That's whack. That submarine thing. I don't even know where to start with that. Like you could start whatever wacky conversation, make it last 5 minutes and be like, guys, we gotta get back to work, but it's really nice chatting with you. Like, especially like if you can check up on individual students, I understand that's not really a possibility, but if you have a smaller class, like, be like, hey, how was your weekend? So no driving seems like, no driving, like people not driving that much. I mean, I'm definitely scared of driving. I feel like it's a lot of responsibility, especially with ADHD. I just have a higher statistic to get in a crash. Statistically, I'm much higher to get in a crash and hurt myself or someone I care about. So it's something I'm very scared to do. I keep like going through the manual. I probably could take the test just fine now, but I'm scared to make the first steps because I am aware that I myself could be a danger to someone just as I am. So I think it is a generation. Yeah.
Driving, I feel like there needs to be a shift also in driving instruction for neurodiverse because you're right. Like I read all of that stuff about the statistics and yet like and personal experience, but like I'm actually a really good driver and I'm not entirely sure why, but I am probably because part of it is I hyper focus when I drive. I really like driving. And so, and I play a game called Who's the Stupidest? And so I try and guess which driver on the road is going to do the dumbest thing in front of me. But what it means is that I'm constantly paying attention to what everyone's up to so that I can anticipate when something bad is going to happen. And going to college 4 hours away was a lot of time on the road for me to practice that. And I'd much rather drive with big trucks than regular people because I'm much more comfortable. It's a weird thing, but no, a lot of my students actually don't drive or don't. One of my students finally got his license because he is an EMT and he needed to drive the ambulance. So he doesn't drive cars, but he drives ambulances. And another of my students just, I mean, a lot of my students have just, there's very little interest in it, or, some of them actually taking the test has been harder. And I found the tests ridiculous. Like, I still don't know what side you're supposed to pass a mail truck on. And I don't know why that's still a question. And that's a part of it, right? Like the questions are stupid and I'm not going to pay attention to things that don't matter.
And the manual's thick. Like it's not ADHD friendly. There's not enough pictures. I'll say that. Like it's I use speech to text for everything. Like there's Chrome extensions, but like even then, like it's hard to sit through. So sorry, I'm not.
Montgomery College has a driver's ed class for neurodivergent students. That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's specifically autistic students or all neurodivergent students because they have an autism program there too.
Good to know. I wish I knew that when I was going to MC. That would have been fantastic.
You should talk to Towson about it because they have a neurodivergent program.
That would have been great to know. I just kind of threw a dart and I'm like, what has an okay art program and is in state because I don't want to pay that much? Towson, like it works. So
yeah, that can be a whole nother discussion topic for another day. Our I mean, a lot of colleges are much more neurodivergent friendly, but there are some specific colleges out there that craft themselves. So like University of Iowa is one of them. They actually run cohorts of neurodivergent twice exceptional students, and they have like a whole support structure for them. They're also researching them, but I wouldn't have minded somebody researching me if it meant that I had the support to go to college. Towson is another very well-known one. I'm totally blanking. The big engineering one up in Pennsylvania, Hofstra, maybe.
It's a school.
It is a school. I don't remember if it's the school I'm thinking of. I have to go look it up now. Because I had a student who went to, they had a whole setup, and it was really interesting because essentially you could pay for different levels of case management. And it was everything from just like a little bit more than what your advisor does check in, to having somebody who checked in with you weekly, to somebody who really like actually case managed you. But the tuition, my student got a full scholarship academically, but the cost of that support person was as much as tuition, and there was no scholarship for it. So they took a lower level. McDaniel is another one that actually, again, not necessarily a neurodivergent program, but they have like that kind of case management thing. And one of my students won a scholarship to cover the mid-level version. So it was very similar, where they would check in with her for studying. They'd help her set up study groups. They'd help her kind of navigate. They'd help her work with the disability services counselor to make sure that she knew how to go to her professors and tell them what it was she needed. And there was another level up there, but colleges are doing a much better job. When I first started, and it was a fight. I had a student who had a vision issue, who was taking, of all things, ASL, and was having trouble getting accommodations from the ASL teachers, who could not seem to understand her vision issue. So it was like the weirdest conversation to have. But it's gone from that to, like, I know with Montgomery College, where they're like, send us your IEP so that we know, or they'll send us, send us this section, this section, this section, so that they can build your build the accommodations that you need. And you still have to do, obviously, like, the support for yourself, and there's still all like the FERPA laws in place, but they ask better questions and they give better support than they did even 5 years ago.
I wish getting an IEP in college was more neurodivergent friendly, because it's been something I've really struggled with. Like, I've got my IEP, but not without metaphorically pulling teeth. It's a really odd extra process. Like, there's so much more understanding about it now, but I have to do so much legwork. And by so much legwork, I mean, like, I have to make a call and send an email or two, which isn't that bad. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not horrible, but it's like, also, like you said earlier about like, emotional disabilities, like, as someone who had everything I already described and probably had like really bad depression and anxiety in high school, like atrociously so, still there, but so much better. It's like, I think that probably also plays a factor. And I think like things like reaching out for help in any form is difficult, especially when you're like, hey, I'm a little goofy child who can't do anything right. Can I please get more help? Feels a little embarrassing. So accommodations are really difficult, especially when it feels like they want, like, I ask a direct question. I'm like, hey, I need help with this, X, Y. And they're like, go through our chain of command, go through this chain, go through this channel. And it feels very dismissive and very cold and it's so easy to fall through the cracks. And I understand that's with everything. I understand when it's with like getting a doctor's appointment or whatever, because it's not built for me. But when something like getting an IEP is supposed to be built for me and so hard, I think that's really lame.
I feel like that's feedback that the group should know, and maybe not you, since you're like the art person, but I wonder if there's somebody like within the program who's going into education who might want to know things like that, because it's one of the pieces that I know we train our students on is exactly that kind of process and preparing for it. And I think no matter how much I talk about it in high school to tell you guys, hey, this is going to happen, it's not real till it's real, until you actually have to like fight for those like pieces. I'd be happy to present with Coley at a conference.
I don't know how helpful I'd be. Like, I want to help, but I'll try. I'll do it. But
I'll fill out the paperwork and you'll sit on the stage and talk. Like, we got it down.
Oh my gosh, if you do the paperwork, I'll do anything.
Which is also
No.
hilarious because I'm writing 2 articles right now with somebody
Really?
else who's doing the exact same thing for me, because she's like, I just need everything out of your brain. I'm like, that's scary, but you know, we'll filter it. So she's like writing the outline for me and telling me like where I need to fill in, and she's giving me dates that I have to do that. But I could totally do that for like you. I just can't do it for me, which is why I was a great case manager, but not always a great paperwork person.
Yeah, I get that. Honestly, I can do so much stuff for other people, like when I want to, but like if it's for myself, I'm like, I can eat this food that I left out all night. I don't want to cook more. I'll eat the chicken nuggets I left out overnight and then I'm sick. But like it was so much effort to make more food. Like, why would I do that when there's chicken nuggets? I've stopped doing it. I'm better about it now.
Oh, I
But
haven't. So like, I'm just laughing.
it happens still once in a while where I eat something bad because it's just, there's nothing that like my neurodivergent lizard brain wants to make or eat. And I'm just like, oh, I guess I'll starve or eat this thing that's gone bad.
Mhm.
Gone bad. And it's a very consistent thing. But I've gotten better as in it's not meat anymore. I don't eat meat that's gone bad. So let's give me props for that. Because like
Eggs don't have to be in the refrigerator. I just want you to know. Despite what my mother tells me.
no, seriously.
I feel like a lot of you guys, especially if you don't live in neurodivergent households, like you should come like tour our lives for a hot minute, because
I think we
it's a
would
whole
really-
nother world.
I feel like it's really hard talking to anyone who's like neurotypical about my neurodivergence lifestyle. That sounded really weird to phrase it like that, but like I'm just out there in a lot of ways. Like I'm queer, I'm neurodivergent, I have very niche hobbies that look very odd to the outside person. Like I do animation, but primarily I draw androgynous furries in my free time, and that's what I get the most money doing. And so like when people come into my life and they're like, oh, let me see your art, let me experience things with you, I'm like, I got this bird hitting someone with the head with the baseball bat, I got paid $40 to draw that, like an animated video. I genuinely got paid to do that like last week. It's great. I'm having a good time. But like looking in at my organizational system, how I eat, how I function, like people be like, why don't you just do it this way? And I'm just like, because I won't if I try to do it that way. If I try to do it with that way, it won't happen. I won't eat, or I won't drink, or I just won't take care of myself. Like transition periods are really hard for me
Mhm.
because my routine is set off whack, even though my routine is not consistent at all anyway, but the semblance of a routine's gone. And all I can really do is in waiting mode. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about, but like when you're waiting for something to happen and you can't physically do jack, like you're just stuck there. Your whole body feels heavy. Like that's what like executive function is, but dysfunction is. But like, especially when you're waiting on a transition period, I hate it when friends said they're coming over and then they don't show up and then cancel, or they're late. I respect it and I don't get angry at them for it because I understand I have the issue too, but I'm just sitting there waiting. I don't do anything. I sit there and I wait like a fucking puppy at the door. Sorry,
All adults.
I cuss a lot. I was trying to be good. I think I failed. My bad.
So on Sunday, I had to meet with Teresa, who's going to be talking on Thursday, and we were meeting at 11 o'clock. And I also had a friend who's a professional organizer who has been helping us dig out of our basement. And she's like, are you ready to work? And I'm like, I can't. I have a meeting at 11. It was 9:30. She's like, she's also neurodivergent. She goes, oh, okay. And I sat on that couch for an hour and a half. I did fold clothes. Like she put a laundry basket in front of me, so it was something to do. But I sat there like checking my phone every 2 minutes so I wouldn't miss talking to Teresa, but also knowing like, A, it's my phone, she can call me, and B, she's also, I believe, neurodivergent. So like, she's doing the same thing on the other side. Like we're both sitting there waiting until 11 o'clock. And I called her at 10:59. And as I called her, an alarm went off in her background to call me. And we had alarms like oh no, she's not up here. My Alexa friends, like we don't say it downstairs because she can hear you. But like Alexa's our best friend downstairs. And the other day, my husband asked her like 15 times in 5 minutes what time it was, because, you know, he gets lost out there. So he has to ask what's time. And like, there's so many technology things. I think that they can be a little imprisoning, but they can also be such a help.
No, literally. I was gonna respond and then my brain died.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the last sentence you said again?
No.
Okay, valid. I get that.
What did I say?
But yeah, like that whole waiting period, it's so hard. And I think it's like even funnier when you're both neurodivergent and you understand it, but it's so hard when you're talking to a neurotypical person. You're like, hey, this is a struggle I have with, and they kind of look at you like, deal with it. Like, thanks.
Right.
Feel really loved and accepted right now. But yeah, I think there's just so many unseen struggles that you wouldn't even think to talk about until like it becomes conflict. And luckily for me, communication has never been really an issue for me. I'm pretty good at like saying okay, I'm not good at saying what I mean, but I'm good at communicating what's necessary to communicate to get the point across and to make someone see from my point of view most of the time. And I think that's really important, especially when it comes to a lot of other things. And I know you brought this up really earlier and I made mental note to talk about it. I'll try to get through it quick because I know you have other things you want to talk about. But you said mental, like emotional disabilities. I think with like, I brought up vaguely for a second that I dealt with really bad anxiety and depression. I didn't get really any help for that because I never reached out because felt like there was no point because there was no systems in place to help me. But regardless, it was rough getting through high school, like impeccably. Basic tasks felt impossible on top of my executive function. And with that all put together, I think this is sort of going into an LGBTQ issue. It's kind of scary right now being queer on a lot of levels. Like on a lot of levels, it's very hard to exist as a queer person, especially a queer child, when rights are being taken away. And like some people need to like reach out and need to like tell your parents that you go by a different pronoun, or depending on the state you're in. I don't think that's an issue in Montgomery County. Love this place. I don't want to go, but it's so expensive. But like everywhere.
Actually, part of our official training is on queer and trans kids' rights, and like it is Montgomery County policy that we call you by the pronouns that you want, that we do not out you to parents. You know, there's a whole form that you actually fill out when you work with your counselor if you do want to change your pronouns and whether or not your family knows at home. There's a form that your parents can fill out. The only place that it's a sticking point, and I didn't know this until it became an issue like a couple of months ago, IEPs are a legal document, and so unless your name is changed legally, I have to refer to you by your given legal name and not your chosen preferred name. And that's true whether you go by your initials or you go by a different, but I can refer you to you by the pronouns that you like. That one is not in there. So, or at least nobody's told me I can't. So yeah, it's been interesting to kind of learn to navigate all that. And I do wonder if that's federal law, so it's going to be a lot trickier to change. But this is one of the places that you're right, I think decent. I'm not going to say great, but like a much better job than other places.
Definitely. I think it's just important to be like, and I'm not trying to like say you guys aren't aware, but it's just important to be aware of what's going through your kid's head. Cause like, it's hard to think, oh, this math test is great and I want to keep doing this and this is fun and I'm going to have a great time, when you don't even know if you're going to be safe still tomorrow, when you don't know if like your parents are going to kick you out, or you're going to be like, if you even want to like still be here tomorrow. Like it's a really hard thing to prioritize when you don't even want to exist, or when you don't feel like you deserve to exist. And I think it's really important to have like, I think the whole like calling immediately and immediately reporting makes sense. You guys are mandated reporters, but it means that kids can't come to you to some degree. And I think that's unfortunately the case. And I had to report so many of my friends in high school. Multiple of my friends had jumped into things they shouldn't have to try to not exist. And it was my job to make sure that they didn't go through with it. And I took on that role.
Also such a burden on you, because you also draw that line between, and I was probably your age when I had to make a phone call like that for a friend, and that friend didn't speak to me for 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years later, we grew up and we're like, thank you, and I appreciate it. But at the time, it was
It's a really hard thing. And I just wish that there was like some middle ground between like calling your parents and saying, hey, I'm scared and I hurt myself. Like, I think there needs to be a middle ground, because otherwise kids won't reach out themselves for help.
Mhm.
So at least in my experience, what I've seen from my friends and all that stuff, which isn't about neurodivergence, it's just about mental health. But you brought it up for like a second and I latched onto that. I'm
No,
like, I
and-
didn't want to talk about this. This is
No,
important.
no, but I was gonna say, honestly, like, it's something we talked about in the last class, and it's what our featured guest speaker is gonna talk about our next class on Thursday is, I was saying, the prevalence of queer LGBTQ people who are also gifted and then who are also twice exceptional is much higher. Like, if you are LGBTQ plus or queer, you are more likely to be gifted, and like, it's a weird thing, and it's hard to measure, because one, that's assuming people are identified as gifted, that's assuming they're identified with a disability, that's assuming they've come out and identified themselves as not cisgendered or not whatever. And then from there we start our research, and I was sharing with the group that in MCPS you can identify yourself as male, female, or non-binary, but if you start as she and you change to he, there's no marking about that, and so I can't count you in my numbers to say, yes, this also includes this population, like this trans population, because I don't have and I'm not saying I should, but for research purposes or tracking purposes, it's hard to say this is what this really looks like. And I know that's going to be a big part of what Teresa talks about on Thursday. Is it's a field that is so much more anecdotal, because not only do you have all these other parameters going on, but if you are honoring the person who they are and they have changed from one gender to another, and you call them by their preferred gender with their preferred pronouns, then you're specifically not calling them out as trans or something. But then that hurts my research, which is not an important thing. It's important to identify the person, but it makes it harder to explain the situation.
Yeah.
I hope I explained that without sounding however I probably sounded, but it's hard to make a point, especially when you're in education research. I think it's hard to make a point when you don't have data, and when you explicitly don't have data for a good reason, and it's the data you're likely never to have, it's really hard to make your point.
It really is. And I think that's really hard, especially when I'm surrounding myself in multiple communities, which are very fruity. And it's kind of just a habit that I've made, just because those are the people I've gravitated to. I'll make friends, and then we all just came out at the same time. It was just kind of a thing. We just all knew. And I think the thing about that is, even if they are queer, it like comes to the point where it's like, why would they want to admit that right now with the state of the world? Like, you can't quantify it, one, because you might not know, but two, how would you even write that down, especially if they're in the closet?
Mhm.
It's really hard to quantify, and I completely understand where the issue would be. It feels like it has to be a secret minority in data, and I think that's horrendous when we could be doing so much more to help so many people. Because I think it's very consistent that especially queer and neurodivergent folks fall through the cracks. Not like both of those people, but both of those people individually, especially when we talk about intersectionality. If you talk about intersectionality in any other way, like gender and race and ethnicity, and if we like add more and more to it, there's some kids that are just really not statistically as frugal. Is that the word? Frugal? I feel like I misuse that word. Like, ability to have things happen well.
Right. No, I know what you're saying. That's not quite the right word.
No, it's not. I think
Somebody will think of it. But when you get to a point of intersectionality, if everything keeps crossing like a Venn diagram, eventually that center circle is just so teeny tiny. Ooh, statistically disadvantaged. I like
That's
that.
great. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you.
I like that. And we talk about the difference between an underrepresented population versus a nope, there's the Roomba going by again. I read when people are like, my train fell off the tracks. I'm like, I saw a meme the other day. It was like, I don't have a train. There are no tracks. It's a Roomba, and it goes in one direction until it bumps something, and it
Yes,
goes some way.
yes, I love that. That is exactly like my
But-
brain is in a train track or anything. It's the window screensaver. Whenever it hits the corner, I have a thought. Like
Yeah.
that's my
And they're all connected somehow. Eventually you'll find how we got there, but we're talking about underrepresented versus underserved versus something else that I can't remember, where we're talking about like in underrepresented is my problem, and or underrepresented is like the descriptor of like we're not finding people, and underserved is we know they're there and we're not meeting their needs.
right.
And there was like another piece of it. And so like within our twice exceptional world, and we have kind of our thrice exceptional world, which is when you have those three intersections of the social piece as well as the neurodivergence as well as the giftedness, and it's its own population. And I spend a lot of time looking into that, but I've said like as much as at this point I almost feel like a majority of my students are somehow identifying on a queer spectrum. It's not an area that is my expertise, and it's hard to talk about because I don't want to speak a story that's not mine, but I also want to make sure we have that opportunity for voices to be heard. So like I've said, when people ask me, because boys tend to be overrepresented in so many of these categories, a lot of times I get, especially from like girl parents, like how many boys and how many girls are in the program? And I've gotten to the point where for high school, I'm just like, there's people. And I think we talked last week, there's cisgender and not cisgender.
Yeah.
Because my students are so fluid in how they identify themselves that I don't feel comfortable identifying. Now, I've also found that when I say that, they're like, well, as long as it's not all cis boys, we're good. And I'm like, unfair, but understandable. And, you know, we kind of have that cross in there. So Coley, this has been absolutely amazing. I could talk to you for hours, but I also, it's 9 o'clock and I want to respect everyone's time. So I told your mom we definitely have got to get in contact, and I think we can do some, you know, amazing things to make sure your voice is heard on a much larger level. I represent the special interest group for National Association for Gifted Children for Twice Exceptional, and so I have a lot of like contacts out in the world, and I just love to get like student voice out because I can share what my story was, but I'm old now, and having people who are so much closer to K-12 or we talk about PK-20, which is pre-kindergarten through undergraduate, and you're right there in the heart of that, and that's a big area for our people. So thank you so much. I couldn't have planned this better. I can't even take it. Absolutely fantastic.
I'm glad I could help. Sorry for talking the entire time.
You know what? Sometimes hearing like the real story is so much more helpful than, I don't know what I was going to talk about because I have so many tabs open up here. But
Yes.
but I mean, for the class, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out some which way, but this was just amazing. And I do hope you come and hear Teresa on Thursday, because I think you're gonna feel very seen and heard from her.
That sounds
Thank you,
fantastic.
everyone. I'm gonna stop my recording before I forget.
Thanks, Coley.